Welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Kiriakou, and this is the podcast that aims to help people within the recruitment industry get 1% better after every single episode. We've had such a wide variety of different guests that come on the show that talk openly about their stories, about sharing value, tools, techniques, strategies, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all within the recruitment space. And every single episode, we like to have as much fun as possible with open conversation back and forth. It's not scripted, it's uncensored. And as I mentioned, I like to have fun doing this podcast because I know that if you're going to tune into this, you want to feel like you're part of a conversation whilst also leveling up your game within the recruitment space. So if you like this podcast, please do us all a favour. Comment, like, subscribe, follow on all the platforms. It really helps drive engagement for the show. And that's enough from me. Let's get into this week's episode, and I hope you enjoy. Fraser, thank you very much for joining us on the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast. I'm sure it's nice for you now because obviously I went on your podcast somewhat recently, and now I get to return the favour and you're a guest on the show.
Charles, honestly, thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to have you on my podcast, and yeah, I'm excited to come on yours. I've seen some of your episodes, and let's get into it.
Love it. I love it when people come on and gas me up in the first 5 seconds. It's just, it's going to be a good episode when that happens. And for people that are not in the UK, that means like hype me up and whatnot. But anyway, I really enjoyed the episode I did with Fraser. For people that haven't, this isn't me just trying to plug, but for people that haven't, it was a really good episode. Fraser was a fantastic guest, so hopefully I can reciprocate that with some good questions, and we'll get into a really cool conversation. So before we go to Fraser for an intro for people that may or may not know him, just to give people a bit of an overview of what the topic of conversation will be today. We're going to just talk a lot about Fraser's story. We touched a little bit on his show, but as a great podcast host as he is, he made it more about me on that one, and I'm going to try and make it more about him today. And talking about why and how he got into recruitment, the state of rec to rec. He's recently set up his own business, so we'll talk a little bit about that. So, from a recruiter's perspective, there'll be lots of things you can learn from Fraser. And obviously, if you're thinking about setting up a business or have done so, there'll be some cool lessons and interesting things to take from this. Both Fraser and I have also sold to salespeople. I've done that. I still technically do that to this day. So there'll be a lot of value that we can offer you guys throughout this episode. And then finally, just a little bit about taking risks as a recruiter, which I think is absolutely huge. So let's get into this, Fraser. For people that may or may not know who you are, mate, just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're currently doing, etc., etc.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Fraser Graham. I'm the founder of Nautic, which is a rec-to-rec business. I specialise in the Manchester area and can be anything between consultant up to director level appointments.
Love it. Okay, short, sharp, to the point. Nautic. What made you go for Nautic? Just purely out of curiosity.
It's rooted in family, to be honest. So I've always found boats to be really symbolic for me, which I know can sound a bit corny, but hear me out. So Nautic is abbreviated from nautical, which is obviously to do with sailing, navigation, ships, etc. My family background is, if you can tell by my complexion, I'm half Irish and half Jamaican. So on the Jamaican side of my family, I had the Windrush era, which is basically where like my grandparents come over on a boat, etc., set up a new life for us, come over to the UK, and similar with my Irish family as well. Come over from Dublin and Kilkenny, and yeah, they set up here. So in that sense, boats are really symbolic for me. But then also Nautic and nautical being based on navigation, I thought that's perfect for what I do. Consistently navigating recruitment careers, which is kind of like the tagline for the business. So yeah, that's pretty much why we got the name.
Love it, mate. Yeah, and I really like the logo and stuff. I think it's really, really cool. So tell us a little bit about your story then. Obviously, we touched on it very loosely when I went on your podcast, but you've got quite an interesting, unique story about like how you got into recruitment and stuff. Just talk us through that.
Yeah, so I got in when I was 18. At the time, to be honest, I was stressing. I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. I come out of college where I was playing football and studying sport at the same time. I thought that'd be the path that I'd go down. But once I'd actually finished my studies, I just thought this isn't for me. So yeah, I was stressing, didn't know what to go in. And ultimately, I actually had a family friend who was really successful that said, if I weren't to have found success in the industry that I found it in, I've got loads of friends that went into recruitment and made a lot of money there. So me being as I was when I was 18, I thought, money's that way. I'm going to head that way as well. So I literally took one recruitment interview, took the first job that was offered to me, happened to be in rec to rec, and yeah, here we are coming up to 5 years later now.
Yeah, nice. So rec to rec, right? I remember when I first got into recruitment, I did a few months in social care, really didn't like it. Then did two and a bit, well, just about 2 years or so in like nursing, healthcare recruitment, and I loved that time. It was some of the most fun moments I've had in my career. But we always, as you can imagine, right? We always used to get rec to rec messages on LinkedIn, and I remember like all the leaders, senior people, leaders in the business were like, "Mate, tough job that. Like that is just." That's like most brutal industry. Like I would take headhunting CEOs in the corporate world for rec to rec, trying to get junior grads and things like that. Like, yeah, like I'd like to understand kind of what, obviously it's only been a few years or so, but like what was that like? Like that's your first job in recruitment and you're recruiting recruiters. Like talk us through like the minefields that you've had to go through by doing rec to rec.
So at first it was actually really easy, which I know is probably not what you were going to expect me to say.
Yeah.
Over the years, it's become really difficult, and I'll
Mm.
touch on that as we go through the podcast. But at first, I was super fortunate because you've got to think of the context of like when I actually got into the industry. It's 2021, the market was on fire,
Yeah.
grads were coming out of lockdown and thinking, I need to get a job, I want to earn money, much like I was myself. And it was actually really easy. I know
Hmm.
that when I first stepped in, I was doing graduates in Manchester, obviously entry level recruitment positions, and everyone just wanted a job. And all the clients had a lot of demand to bring in
Mm.
resources, delivery consultants. So I think in my second month, I'd done about 30 to 35K. So
Damn.
from that perspective, it was really easy. However, it also very quickly taught me about the ups and downs of the industry.
Yeah.
Because yes, I did 35K, but disclaimer, I'd probably say that was split across 7 or 8 roles, and I think maybe 6 of them dropped out.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
So from like a demand of like getting candidates, which in recruitment is the key thing, that was super easy in filling the roles. But then
Mhm.
I think ultimately finding out, okay, this is recruitment. There's going to be ups and downs. You need to be resilient. That's where it started to get hard. And the
Yeah.
market's changed over time. I went from doing graduates and entry level initially to
Mhm.
now for the past sort of 3, 4 years, I've done pretty much all experienced, and that's been anything from like a consultant on maybe like a 25 to 30K basic salary.
Mhm.
And I've placed all the way up to like senior partners in international search firms for like 250K salaries. So I've worked at quite a few different levels.
Yeah, nice. And how many business? Because you worked at that your first company, and then I know you started working with AJ and Cow Equanimity Search. Is that just before you set up Nautic? Were those the only two
Yeah.
businesses, right?
That's it. So I've done 2 businesses in Rec to Rec, and I also had a brief stint outside of Rec to Rec,
Hmm.
which I can touch on as well in the podcast. But that was for a short period as well. So I've seen both sides of being
Yeah,
a recruiter and also seeing the reputation that Rec to Recs have, especially when
yeah,
they call into an office when everyone's in.
yeah.
It usually goes something like, "This Rec to Rec is spamming me. I have no interest in any of his opportunities. Everyone avoid it if this number calls in." So I've seen
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah, I remember vividly a rec to rec calling the office, and this was back in not even that old. When I say it makes me sound older, but when we had hard phones and desktop computers, no laptops, like you would make some calls from your mobile, but it was rare. You would just use the hard phone and physically dial. And I remember someone called because we had like our own extension, right? Someone called my extension. I answered the phone thinking it's a candidate client, and they were like, "Hey Charles, full transparency. I'm a rec to rec. I've seen your profile. I've got some opportunities." And I kind of just looked over. And no word of a lie, 2 desks to my left was my managing director and the founder of the business. And I just jokingly just went along with it and went, "Tell me about these opportunities you have then." And everyone's like, "What the fuck?" And I'm just like, but the way my brain works, I respect it. Do you know what I mean? Especially, and we'll touch on kind of the changes in the market now, but I respected it because that's what I have to do. I used to call I used to do some really cheeky techniques where I would call up and we had a burner phone in the office and I would call up and then pretend to be like a matron at a hospital or a commercial director for a private healthcare institution and say, "Yeah, I need to speak to Fraser Graham, who's your London rep or your Manchester rep. Can you get him to call me back on this number? And if I don't answer it, make sure in the voicemail he gives his mobile and stuff so I can reach back out." And then the burner phone would ring and then you'd listen to the voicemail. "Oh, it's Fraser here from Manchester. Here's my mobile." And then you call them back and say, "Hey, I'm headhunting you." And there was many other sort of funny sort of headhunting tactics and stuff. But I respected that guy for doing it. But I want to ask you kind of, as you've been on both sides and predominantly on the rec to rec side, recruiters obviously do have a reputation, right? My first question to you would be, why do you think recruiters have such a, let's be really honest here, such a bad reputation in the workspace?
Yeah. I think it's a cycle, right? So if you look at it on a spectrum, you have people in any industry, whether that's, whether you're an engineer or you work in tech or you work in finance, there's a constant stigma of we don't value recruiters or recruiters are a waste of time. But that gets passed down the chain. So the people who are working in industry will say that about, let's say, finance recruiters, for example. But then the rec to rec is at the end of the chain trying to get in touch with the finance recruiter. And the finance recruiter will say, oh, rec to rec's all a waste of time. So everyone has got some sort of stigma that recruiters have a bad reputation. I think it comes down to the transactional approach of why recruiters can get in touch with you at times.
Hmm.
It can very much seem like a recruiter's calling you to hit some sort of arbitrary metric or KPI that's been set out for them in the day. They're not really contacting you with any value or any personalization, should we say. They
Hmm.
haven't looked at your profile. They don't really know what you do. They're kind of just taking a shot in the dark and hoping it lands. So yeah, I think there's obviously loads of reasons, but for me, mainly it is because of like how transactional recruiters can be.
To be honest, mate, I totally agree with you. I look back when I was a recruiter and when I try and help recruiters now through coaching, like what I always wanted to think about what do I offer that's different to other recruiters? And in the last like 4 years or so, since I've well about two and a bit, no, 4 years, yeah, since I've got into L&D, the recruitment landscape has changed a lot, and it will change even more. I always used to think like, what value can I offer? Why would they want to work with me, etc. And the one thing that always kind of strong like came to mind for myself was I'm a very relationship orientated person. I want them to work with me, and I'm going to consult rather than spec a profile to 100 companies, hope someone comes back, do a deal, and then only speak to them again when they're actually hiring. Whereas for me, I wanted to build that relationship so that, let's say, for example, I was hiring for your business and you said, Charles, I'm not going to hire until Jan next year, but I speak to you every single month and I'm offering value and you're coming to my events and you're coming on the podcast, all that type of stuff. And then by January, when we're catching up again and you go, do you know what? Actually, I've just got budget from finance. I'm going to hire 3 people. That why would they want to work with anyone else? They've got that relationship with me, and I feel like, and again, I would like for you to maybe talk more on this, but if I've got to be careful with saying that this is a dead practice nowadays, but I feel like that is, I don't know, is it dying or is it just, do not enough people just do it? I don't know. What do you think?
For me, I think recruitment and sales in general is pretty much just polite persistence. So if you can stay in front of someone's mind for an extended period of time, when that time comes, like you say, why would they go to anyone else? Especially if you've followed up with value at every single touch point, there's
Mm,
absolutely no reason why they wouldn't choose you to partner with. So
mm,
yeah, that's how I look at recruitment. I think in my industry, it's slightly nuanced because
hmm.
I think a lot of recruiters will find their biggest challenges in BD and winning accounts and winning clients. In rec to rec, it's the reverse.
Yeah.
It's obviously all about getting the candidates right, for the most part anyway.
Mm,
So I guess in my game, everything's about polite persistence. It's building relationships with candidates over an extended period of time.
yeah.
Obviously, those candidates, the good ones, aren't actively looking all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, when they come around, if you're the rec to go to, then it's because of polite persistence over multiple touch points. And I find that out of most of my placements, it usually probably takes anywhere between 5 to 10, sometimes 15, 20 touch points over months, years even before you actually
Mm.
place that person.
And that's like touch points with the candidates, is it?
Touch points with the candidate. So it can
Yeah.
be really creative and it's not always so transactional. I
Mm,
think that's what makes a good rec to rec, which we can talk about.
mm,
I've spoken with some good competitors of mine who agree with me on this as well, but it ultimately comes down to offering value without seeming like a salesperson at every
hmm.
touch point. So it can be super creative. It can literally be inviting someone to an event or a networking thing that you go into,
Mm,
or could be saying, "Hey, I've just done a post about salary thresholds or average thresholds across
mm.
Manchester, etc.," and sort of sharing that with people. So it's just about adding value at every stage that you can.
Well, you've given me a couple of examples because that was going to be my next question is that, what value you can actually offer on those touch points specifically to candidates. Because I go through this a lot with people, especially on the BD front, because I'm fully aware in rec to rec, if you've got a powerhouse candidate, there are going to be a lot of businesses that will probably make space for that said candidate. But I always talk about exactly those things, events, I've got podcasts, sharing posts and stuff. You said about like thinking a bit sort of creatively out the box. Is there any specific examples you can pluck out your brain that go, do you know what, this was a bit wacky, or this is a slightly different touch point, or anything like that?
Creatively out the box. I mean, I'm very intentional about this, and
Mm,
I've even got spreadsheets where I've got like different ideas of, 10 creative ways, for example, that I can get in touch with people. It can be anything. I think on the rec to rec side, it is very much a lot of the work that we do is through LinkedIn, obviously, because that's where all recruiters hang out. So a lot of it can just be, hey, I saw you post. And you might not be like, hey, I saw you post and seen your profile and think that you'd be great for this client, but it may be, hey, I saw you post. I also have had a similar experience, and here's my thoughts. What do you think about this? So it
Mm.
can be creative. I don't think there's really anything that springs to mind that's been like, wow, that was actually really outside the box.
Yeah.
But weird and wonderful conversations happen just off the back of that.
Yeah, I think as well what you said there about utilizing LinkedIn and being quite strategic with it. I had a lady come around my house to do a podcast today, so I think by the time this comes out, it would be the most recent episode or the episode before this. And she was talking about working hard, utilizing LinkedIn, and not just scrolling LinkedIn, but like scrolling LinkedIn, like being commercial about it. And I think you'll agree with this. Every single recruiter has fallen into the trap of you're a bit tired, it's 4 o'clock, you've got an hour left, and then you're just scrolling LinkedIn and you're not really scrolling with any intention. And again, to this day, sometimes I fall into that trap. But the best moments when you're just quote scrolling on LinkedIn, and I'd like for you to maybe speak little bit more on that from your experience as well, because you're actually doing recruitment, is when you're scrolling is like DMing that person and saying, "Oh, Fraser, I saw your post about being British. This is what I think. What do you think?" You know, that type of stuff. And you might not necessarily find leads and active candidates from those things, but they're door openers. It's like you're utilizing that commercial bit of information as like a master key to open the door to go into the room and have a conversation, which I think is pretty much the sole purpose of this job is to fucking have conversations, right?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's a networking platform. So it's no different to if you were in a room and you heard, another group of people speaking about something specifically, and you might have just overheard or been eavesdropping, and you go over and say, hey, I heard what you were saying about that. Here's my thoughts. What do you guys think? It's the same, but obviously just on a social platform. And it's interesting, right? Because with Rec to Rec, so much of our business is generated through LinkedIn.
Hmm.
And if we were recruiting in other industries, we might have a manager behind us saying, what are you doing? Get off LinkedIn, get on the phones. But in recruitment, recruiting recruiters, it's very, very different because you find constant opportunities by what someone posts, what someone interacts with, what they might have said in your DMs. Obviously, not everything comes through LinkedIn, but when you're Rec to Rec, a lot of it does.
Yeah, and it's just being smart and strategic with it, right?
Yeah.
If that person is on LinkedIn and doing all those things that we've just said, and they're getting calls booked in the diary, that can yield better response than just hammering a list of people that you've never ever given any touch points to. Because that's a debate that I've had with people, and I worked with a business last year, 2024, where they were working in a very tech orientated market, building up a desk in the US, and they just simply just were not making phone calls, like being honest. And obviously, I'm quite old school in my approach, where if there's a number there, fucking call them. And if you've sent them an email, if you spec'd out to the client, or you've sent the candidate a message because you think they could be right for a job, and then they've got a number, the minute they answer, you just reference the fact that you have just messaged them or emailed them, and it just almost in their mind seems slightly more warm than just a random, "Oh, you've never heard of me," da 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 da. But they just weren't making calls, and then their bosses were basically like, right, here's a list of 500 people, just call through. That's all we want you to do all day. And I think they got like two connections. So I kind of analyzed the data and was like, right, so either the data you've given them is fucked, like it's wrong, or you're calling at the wrong times, or these people in that market are seeing a number, whether it's a US number or a UK number, and they just don't like speaking to people on the phone if they don't know them, and they're just not doing that. So we need to switch up the strategy, and this goes against kind of the way I was taught of just fucking call. So then they started to do those targeted personalized spec outs. They started to utilize LinkedIn, and they made half the amount of dial outs in comparison to the 500, and had double, well, way more than double, because they only got through to like two. But they 10x their amount of conversions and meetings. And one of the girls did a post a couple months back from, where are we today, September, so it was like back in July, about how she hit like a company record month off the back of that type of strategy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. So, again, that's just my little rant there about, you can bash phones, great, but if you're not doing the LinkedIn stuff or the email marketing or anything like that, it can be bad. But then equally, if you're just doing the LinkedIn stuff and you're just DMing people with no commercial outcomes for yourself to then get them on a fucking phone or a video call like this, then you're doomed either way, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it is about finding the balance. I think the beauty of it is being a rec to rec. Obviously, a lot of recruiters will have their phone number just at the bottom of posts or in their about section. So, of course, the attitude is shared. Like if we see a phone number, we are going to make a call. But equally, you have to be calling with value or messaging with value. It's not just one or the other. And
Mm,
I've said to you as well, I've actually worked on both sides. So I've
mm,
done energy contract recruitment, and my day looked very, very different when I
mm,
was doing that. Like that would be go into office. I've got a pre-prepped call list of maybe 100, 200 hiring managers, and I'm just going to call through for two hours of a
yeah.
power hour. And it was very, very different because like you'd have all these conversations, you'd be doing so many cold call openers, but my conversion on that compared to sending cold messages, for example, on LinkedIn in the morning is night and day. Like I was getting nothing from just cold calling hiring managers to cold approaching or slightly more warm approaching
Mm,
leads on LinkedIn.
that's interesting. So when you started to switch away from pure just cold calling to then to the cold emails, cold LinkedIn messages, what did the cold outreach look like aside from the calls?
From a messaging perspective, as in what goes into the message.
Yeah.
Like I say, it can be super creative, so it can be straight to the point, honestly,
Hmm.
and sometimes certain recruiters will appreciate that. It can be as simple as, "Hey Charles, how's it going, mate? I wanted to just put myself on your radar because you look great for X, Y, and Z position." Then make it a little bit personable as to why it would suit you, for example, and then just say, is it worth a chat? But then again, it can be super creative. It can be based on something that you posted, based on work anniversary, maybe someone that you've worked with that we mutually know. It could be anything, mate. Honestly,
Mm.
some of the messages that I've sent, I've looked back and thought, where have I got that from? For example, there was a guy who I wanted desperately as a candidate for a client that I knew he would have been perfect for, and he put something as silly as like avid Manchester City fan in his bio, and I made the whole outreach message linked with basically Manchester City squad player names. And it was, yeah, I said something like the office is a stone's throw away from where you're based,
I
right?
love
Obviously,
this.
John Stones. And basically, I can't remember all the examples that I did because it took me maybe 5 minutes to put it together, but I definitely included at least half the starting 11.
That's
And he
amazing.
come back and he was like, this is amazing. This is something I've never seen before. And you do need to be that creative as a rep.
Yeah. Yeah, mate. I love stories like that. I love those like really creative approaches because I did a post recently about a cold call that I got. And I was trying to be quite ambiguous on the post because he clearly wasn't from the UK. So like language barrier, like his accent was very, very thick, but just everything about the cold call was pretty shit. It was not, but he didn't know who I was. Like he didn't even know the name of my business. It was shit, right? But I get so many emails that are so fucking obviously automated. And again, because I've been in the shoes of someone that is doing the cold outreach to candidates and clients, like if I get a message that's personalized, even if it is totally irrelevant to me, I'll make it like a mission to then just say, really appreciate your message, cool message, but it's not for me. I got a message last week, saw the message, it clearly was automated. They then sent a follow up. Hey Charles, did you see my last message? I was like, I just fuck off. Then they sent me a voice note and it was a real human saying, "Hey, I've sent you again, like really thick accent, could barely understand her, but I messaged her back and said, I really appreciate you spent 25 seconds to send me a voice note. This is why I'm responding. I'm not relevant for these reasons, but if I know of anyone else, then I'll obviously put you my way." And then she just come back with, "I really appreciate you coming back to me, smiley face." And I was like, because I get it. I'm in that situation now where I'm messaging people and stuff, and some people just don't come back to you. But like a, the human approach, and B, that personalization. The fact that you took time out to see that it was a City fan and then was creative enough to utilize some of the players in the messages. Like, of course, people are going to come back to that, not largely at least, right?
Well, it's silly, isn't it? But like I say, you are going to be front of mind for that future point. And in my game, I can't speak for other recruiters, but it's very, very rare that people will come back off the initial message and say, right, timing's perfect. You've caught me at a great time. Let's have a conversation this afternoon. It's very much, I'm not looking, but when I am, rest assured, you will be the person that I come back to. And I'd
Yeah.
probably say out of all my placements, that is how it happens, to be honest with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to talk a little bit about like what it's like selling to salespeople, and we've touched on a few things and stuff, but something we didn't really talk a lot about was like part of your journey is now obviously setting up Nautic and going alone. The lady that was on the podcast today, that will again reference in the episode that would have come out last week, she had a really interesting story, and like a lot of people, knew 2 years into doing a job and setting up a desk in Cyprus, well, for Cyprus in the UK, that she wanted to go and set up alone. But like everyone, just has that fucking fear of like, what if it don't work? How am I going to pay my bills? Da, 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 all that kind of stuff. I've been through that. I would love to hear kind of what went through your mind or when this kind of idea spurted in your head to maybe go alone and what that journey's been like so far. And obviously, it's still quite early on, but yeah, talk us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. It's based off relationships, to be fair. And I think that's what I'd say to every recruiter. Like you say, I am still early days, but the reason that I felt inclined to make the jump is that I really trusted my relationships. And that's basically just been formed over, especially the last year.
Mm.
I've worked with the clients that I work with now, a lot of them for maybe 4 or 5 years. But I would say over the last year, that's where I've really been given a push. I've been given encouragement essentially
Yeah.
by building good relationships, people ultimately communicating that they worked with me
Hmm.
for a reason. And I guess that's really what gave me the push to just jump in and do it. I know a lot of recruiters, like you say, are thinking, oh, if I've not got a salary, I've not got security, I've got the comfort of my job. I get it. I totally get it. But I would challenge you if you have the relationships, it is an opportunity that's there waiting for you to take.
Mm. It's interesting, right? Because I've had quite a handful of people somewhat recently talk about why you shouldn't set up a recruitment business. And the guy that came on to do the episode in the studio, Reese, he lives he's from the UK. He lives out in Dubai at the minute. And one of the things he said was just like, if you're umming and ahhing about it, part of me wants to say just do it. But then there's another part of me that says don't fucking do it because when you've got a cushy job in a somewhat mid-sized, bigger agency, you've got a marketing department. Like when I used to put a deal through, I didn't have to chase invoices. I just put it up and it was on my figures, right? Obviously, I did some of my marketing stuff, but when it came to like company brochures, our marketing department done that, or our external marketing thingamajig done that. So going to events, I just expensed it on the company card. Do you know what I mean? It was all these things that you don't really take into consideration. I don't know how much my LinkedIn license cost. I asked for a new bit of kit, like I got it. Like all these types of things you don't take into consideration. And what you said, I think, is really pertinent is if you don't have those relationships, if you're one of those people that's been on TikTok and read a couple of self-help books and says, yeah, like if I really believe it, I can achieve it, like the secret type bullshit, then maybe not. Do you know what I mean? I think you have to have something that's there for you to go, okay, cool, I've actually got something. What do you think?
Well, that's exactly why I say it, to be honest, because if you don't have the relationships, then the cons of it are going to weigh very, very heavy. And the pros, obviously, you probably won't see them. If you're a recruiter that's billing 500K a year, but you're working in a type of business that you maybe place those roles off the back of house accounts or existing relationships, it's very different. Even if you were like a 100K a year recruiter, but they're all your relationships and everything's 360 and self-generated. So yeah, look, it's obviously a lot more challenging than just being another employee and working as a recruiter for someone else. There's going to be more headaches. You're going to have to chase up invoices, like you say, keep an eye on your expenses and all the baggage that comes with it.
Mm.
But if you've got the relationships, you've got that feeling in your heart and in the back of your head that you can rely on them and you'll be all right and you'll be able
Yeah.
to make do.
Yeah. And what have you found have been any again, because it's really, really early on though, but like what have you found, if anything, to be like any challenges or stumbling blocks? Because I hear a lot of people that when they set up and it's just them, like, and I can fully understand this as a recruiter, is that a lot of companies would say, well, I can work with this agency that have got a whole team of delivery consultants or they've got 10 years worth of experience, etc. Like what sort of challenges, if any, have you sort of come across since just going alone, basically?
Yeah, I'd probably say it comes down to manpower, to be fair, because obviously when you go alone, it's just yourself, and I
Mm,
think the time that you can provide is actually the challenge. So I've had certain clients come to me, and I've had to sort of turn away the business and say, I'll be totally honest, I don't think I'm actually in a position to help you with this because
mm,
it is just me, and I'm oversubscribed in perhaps another area. It just means that I'm not going to be able to put enough time into it. So I think in the early days, as like a solo founder, it comes down to a lot of things that you don't know, obviously,
mhm.
especially with like your accounting and your back office stuff. But yeah, a lot of it can also just come down to now it's just you. Like you don't really have anyone to collaborate with. You've just got to
Mm.
do it yourself.
Yeah. Are you like best friends with the new voice chat GPT at the minute?
Yeah, pretty much like everything. I've been saying this so much recently as well, and this is another reason as to why I'd encourage people to look at setting up if they have the
Mm,
relationships. It's probably never been easier to do it than now. And again, it's early days, so touch wood, I'm not saying this. The episode comes out and I've tanked and the business isn't existing. But we've got things like ChatGPT, which has been a godsend for me. Anytime I don't have an answer to a question or know what someone's asking me, I can just simply put it in there and just have it explained. And then on top of that, you've got things like Zero that helps with your accounting. You've got Calendly for scheduling calls. There's so many softwares and I don't know, there's just tech tools everywhere that you look that can help now. It must have been
Mm.
so hard to set up a business maybe like 15, 20 years ago compared to how it is now.
Yeah, mate, 100%. Mate, I've like I said to you when we clicked record, I'm recording this on I bought a Mac Mini recently because my laptop is a good laptop. Good laptop. Ain't for 4K video recording and editing, like just not. And when my dad came around, who used to edit and create and produce like house music and funk house and whatnot, he had a Mac Mini from 2012, and he was like, it still runs perfectly. There's no fan, there's nothing. Like the editing software is super easy and it's super fast, and I've had it for like over 10 years, and it's perfect. And when I showed him my editing and my home workspace, he looked at my laptop and was like, mate, that's like an Excel laptop. That's an Outlook email laptop. That's a you do your presentations in there. You don't do your fucking you recording in 4K. I was like, yeah, the in-person ones. He's like, mate, does your laptop not crash? I showed him my editing software, clicked like try and export. It crashed within a second. He was like,
Yeah.
mate, get a fucking Mac. So I got the Mac, but funny story. I bought a Mac, like a MacBook on day one of setting my coaching business up. Opened it. I had two monitors, didn't connect to the two monitors, hated the keyboard, it didn't invert, it didn't fit on my desk. I was like, this is shit, I'm taking it back. And they were like, oh, because you've opened it, we can't give you money back. But if you take it to John Lewis, they'll give you some money. It was a grand. John Lewis offered me 300 quid. That was on day one of setting my fucking business up. I needed a laptop, so I went and bought this one, which was a grand. So on day one, I'm 2 grand down. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, what the fuck? So
Yeah.
the reason why I'm mentioning this weird, silly anecdote is that when I first got the Mac Mini to start editing and stuff, the user interface is alien to me. iMovie doesn't make a fucking damn bit of sense. I'm just sat there like, I'm just so overwhelmed and confused. I was like, oh, hang on. Hey, ChatGPT, I've got a Mac Mini. I've not a fucking clue. Can you just talk me through it? Yeah, sure, Charles. Yeah, it can be a bit finicky. And then it just starts talking me through. And then I'm like, oh, I've got an idea about this thing for my new business. What should I do here? Can you critique that a little bit? Da-da-da. I've now got a fucking, like, as to your point about how much easier it is, 5, 10 years ago, I'd have been sat there like, well, that's another £1,000 down the drain.
Yeah.
Do you know
Mate,
what I
honestly,
mean?
it's so, so useful. Like, even I've had calls with my accountant, for example, and he's told me a specific thing to do. And if it was 15, 20 years ago, as soon as I put that phone down and tried to do it and realized that I couldn't, I would have had to ring him right back, like, Chris, can you help me out? And there would have just been constant back and forth. Whereas now you've obviously just got this, which just answers all the questions that you
Mm.
might possibly have. So it's so much easier to set up now than I imagine back then. And hats off to anyone who did it without all the tools we've got today.
100%, man. Well, something we didn't say we were going to talk about, but I think it is quite relevant, seeing as just the conversation we just had. Seeing as you've come into the recruitment industry in the last 4 or 5 years, you've come into it like just essentially post-pandemic, really. Now AI has become this to the point where when I went to London for the expo, I saw you there. Did I see you there or no?
No,
Or
I wasn't there.
no, it was AJ and Cal. Sorry.
That's
Um,
a common mistake. When someone sees AJ, they think they've seen me.
My bad.
I thought,
We'll have to meet up in person in the future. But yeah, the reason why I mentioned that is because it was just everything was AI this, AI that, and look, it's great, but it kind of just a lot of people left that expo going fucking hell, mate. Like we get it, AI is coming, we get it. But seeing as you're like part of the newer generation of recruiters coming in, you've set up your own business, we've got things like ChatGPT and so many other AI tools. What have you noticed speaking to recruiters at all levels now, working in this industry? What have you noticed since AI has become more prominent, I suppose, in the industry, if anything?
still don't really think that people are using it that much, to be honest with you. There's certain clients that I work with where they really are. And typically those are clients that focus on industries within like generative AI, for example. And I think because they're speaking to the leaders within those industries day in, day out, they know how to utilize it. But
Hmm.
outside of that, I mean, other than like LinkedIn posts, are people really using it? I don't know. From the conversations I have with recruiters, people are still pretty much sticking to old school methodology, picking up the phone, putting out job adverts, meeting people in person. That seems to be how people are making doing recruitment. Maybe you could say that obviously there's been a rise of podcasts and recruitment, which is obviously why we're here doing it now.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's AI tools, as you and I both know, that help with podcasts. You see a lot
Hmm.
of recruiters who probably don't have a clue when it comes to video editing, putting
Yeah.
out podcasts, which obviously expands their audience. So yeah, I don't know. I think we're still scratching the surface, to be honest. There's
Yeah.
probably a long way to go. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'm setting up a venture with a couple of other trainers that's going to be like heavily AI orientated, basically, alongside some other training features. And we think that could be a bit of a game changer for the industry. But I think you're right. I don't think that the everyday recruiter and recruitment business owner is really utilizing it that much. And I fully agree with you. I think the only thing that I'm seeing a lot of right now is some rec tech tools that utilize AI for automation. And I've talked about this on the podcast a lot, that I get automation and I understand specific markets it's good for. We talked about transactional recruiters, right? At the start of the show. You're sending out an email, automated email with 6 steps on there that's the only personalization is their name and the company to 100 people or something. I think that just pushes us further back in some way to just show people our recruiters haven't really changed. It's just a fucking vague message that's been sent to everyone on their database. And then obviously like the classic LinkedIn posts with those bait dashes in there that everyone can see. And it's just like, here are 3 things that I learned about cold calling this week. And it's like, it just so blatantly obvious with ChatGPT. So yeah, I think we've got a long way to go, and I think it will massively change the industry. I don't know to what extent, because maybe this is old fashioned, but I still think that even in 20 years' time, and look, I could look back at this and go, how wrong you were. But I think maybe in 20 years' time, we'll look back and go, you know, the human aspect, like human beings are naturally social creatures. We crave that social interaction. We crave those conversations. Yes, there's a massive rise in introverted people that work from home and things like that. But do you really want to be taking one, like when you have to go through those AI chatbots to prove that it's you to log into a website, and it's like, please confirm your PIN. That Do you want to have a conversation with a recruiter that goes, Fraser, thanks. Tell me more
No,
about your experience. And you go, oh, do you know what? My mum's in hospital and I might have to cut the call short. Totally understand. Must be a difficult time. Furthermore, what experience do people want to do that?
not at all.
I
Not
don't
me anyway.
Do you know what I mean? Is that old
Absolutely
fashioned
not.
or like, I don't know.
Yeah, not for me, mate. Like you say, AI is programmed in such a way that, like you impersonated there, it always gives you sort of like positive reinforcement, and it's always, I don't know, sometimes it's a bit annoying. So could you imagine being on the phone to a recruiter that shows that sort of empathy? I just don't think we'd get anywhere. I'm not really an AI doomer, to be honest. I'm
Yeah.
not one of those that thinks, AI is going to replace us all. There'll be no such thing as recruitment. I think that's quite irrational, to be fair.
Mm.
But it will be interesting to see where it
Mm.
takes the industry in the future. Hopefully, it just optimizes us more, but doesn't replace us.
A
That's what
hundred
I don't.
percent, mate. 100%. I can't remember who I spoke to about this in January this year, 2025, and they were basically saying to me, "Don't be an AI doomer. Don't be someone that is going to resent it and go, oh, it's going to steal our jobs and stuff. The tsunami's coming. Like the waves are going, the water's going back, and it's about to fucking crash all over us. Get your fucking surfboard and ride that wave and adopt it now. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind." And we had a conversation about various different revolutions and in like technological advances, right? When the first car was invented, everyone laughed at Henry Ford, right? And said like, no one's going to want to drive a car. We've got horses. We've had horses for millennia. And it was like, well, yeah, sure. But then in comparison to just being able to just drive there way quicker, so much easier. And then all of a sudden, these people that were working on these ranches and stuff for the horses lost their jobs. Same thing happened with like the industrial revolution and stuff. And a lot of these like steel factory workers and stuff lost their jobs because we didn't need to do that anymore. But every single time that's happened, there have been new jobs created. Do you see what I mean? So
Yeah,
I might be naive because I'm not an expert in AI. No one tuning into this podcast thinks I am. But surely it will be a case that for people like you and I, our jobs should, in theory, be made a lot easier, and there'll be hopefully jobs that are more AI orientated. Do you see what I'm saying?
100%. At the end of the day, new jobs come up. Like, look at us here doing a podcast. Who'd have said that this would have been a job? I know it's not your out and out job, but there are podcast hosts out
Yeah,
there that make millions of pounds a year. No one would have thought that 10, 15 years ago.
precisely.
We're not just all sat around sort of dividing up jobs, are we? Saying this group of people can have this amount of jobs and that group of people can have that amount of jobs. There's going to be new
Yeah.
jobs. So I don't think we're going anywhere.
100%. And I spoke to my weirdly, I spoke to my Thai boxing coach who just fell into a rabbit hole about AI, and he was just like, bro, I'm fucking so scared. He was just
A
like, all
Thai
these
boxing
jobs.
coach.
Yeah, literally. And I said to him, I was like, bro, but like his full-time job, I think, is like he does like roofing and stuff. And I was like, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like manual labor type stuff, teaching kids and adults Thai boxing classes and producing music. I think you might be okay. I don't know. But then he was saying that a lot of his family that are like working class, like working in Tesco's, like my local Sainsbury's, there's I think like two things where you can go and like speak to someone to like scan your stuff, right? The rest of it is self checkout, etc., etc. But he was saying that like his accountant, like that won't be a job in the future. Like, why would you need an accountant if you've got a bit of AI software that you can just upload a spreadsheet and it goes, did pay this tax, pay this VAT, da 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 da. That will be gone. So like, what's going to happen to that industry? But so I can understand why some people that maybe aren't in a career where we have to have a personality and speak to people might be shit in the bed a bit. But for people in recruitment, like you speak to recruiters all the time, I speak to recruiters all the time. That like, oh, I'm going to lose my job. If you're good, I think you're fine in recruitment. Really,
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. I think those manual jobs like you were talking about there, they're not going anywhere. Those people will be absolutely fine. But I think equally so will recruiters. If you've got a bit of charisma, personality, and you can differentiate yourself from a robot, which is pretty fucking easy, then you should be fine.
yeah, yeah, I think so. We'll keep that topic. We'll finish that topic on a positive note. I think we'll be fine. I think
Yeah,
we'll be
we'll be
fine.
absolutely fine.
I did quite enjoy doing my AI impression. Though. I thought that was quite good.
I think you were spot on, to be fair. You nailed it.
We have fun on this podcast. Um, tell me a little bit more about selling to salespeople then. So,
Yes.
obviously, I did sales recruitment, medtech sales recruitment for like 6 years. And I'm recently started coaching someone that's transitioned from sales BD to 360. And he was like, "Oh, I'm trying to get leads from these salespeople. They get it. Like it's way harder." I'm like, I don't know, man. I think you just need to reframe it. I think it's easier because they understand. Just have to adjust the way that you kind of have to do it. But equally, selling to salespeople, it's like a double-ended sword, isn't it? Sometimes it's like it's brilliant because they get it, and then sometimes and I think it's like with any market you operate in, right? You're going to get cool people, you're going to get dickheads, like. But from your experience, like, tell us a little bit about what it's been like selling to salespeople.
Yeah, it's an art, 100%. I think the best people that can sell to salespeople are the ones that hide in plain sight. So even if you just look at like the industries as a whole and you look at our job titles, right? If you've got someone that sells like advertising or software, they'll be called like an account executive, or you've got like a politician who sells himself, they're called a politician, right? It's the same in what we do. Like no one in sales likes to feel that they're being sold to.
Mm.
And I think to sell to salespeople, you have to do the same thing. So we were talking before about how I can like as a rec to rec creatively have different touch points with people that have nothing to do with, commission breath or stinking of just wanting to make a few quid.
Mm.
And it's the same in this industry. So yeah, I think you have to hide in plain sight. You have to offer people value whilst also kind of guess come across as like their friend or like an advisor
Hmm.
without it coming across that, you've got a personal interest at the forefront of what you're doing.
Mm.
So yeah, I think selling to salespeople, it's less about obvious sales, more about adding value at every point that you can and ultimately just not coming across as a salesperson because no one likes to be sold to. I don't know about you, but if you went into like a car dealership tomorrow and you noticed the salesman doing specific tactics that you've been trained on as well, whether that's like, keeping up with the Joneses or fear of loss, you
Mm.
spot it from a mile off and something about it turns you away. And I
Yes.
feel like recruiters, when a rec to rec approach them, get that same feeling as well. So I think
Yeah.
you have to hide in plain sight. I think the best salespeople are people that you don't even realize that are selling you.
Yeah. I was literally just about to say that in my last job, one of the sales directors said that the best salespeople sell without making the person feel like they're being sold to. So we're
That's
we're
it.
clearly on the same wavelength. I totally agree. So I'm of the ilk that enjoys it when someone does a pitch or tries to sell, only if they have asked me good questions. So if you, for example, had, let's say I was a recruitment business owner, you had a brand new swanky CRM that utilizes AI, and it was the best thing since sliced bread. And you called me up and said, "Hey, Charles, we've got this new CRM. We're doing a new deal. Just wondered what your situation is with this CRM." I'm like, "Oh, I use Bullhorn at the moment, but I've got some issues." Cool. Let me tell you why we're different. So, if you don't utilize it now, you're not going to get all these sales tactics. I would just at arm's length and just be like, Fraser, like, nah. Even if your product was amazing, okay, granted, obviously, if it was like a ridiculous price and it was fucking, because it's a bit of luck in that instance, right? Because sometimes if you sell something, it could simply be the right time and you do all that sell and they go, do you know what, mate? Yeah, we actually do need that. So let's have a conversation. So sometimes it does work, but I think largely people just they smell it and it's like, ugh, go away. Whereas when people have called me up and said, like, so like we'll use the hypothetical analogy about the CRM. So, oh, so you use Bullhorn. How long have you used that for? Oh, I've used it for like 5, 6 years. Okay, you mentioned there's been a few issues. Tell me a little bit about that. What would you change? What's been the implication of those problems? Okay, if you could change it, what would you need? Oh, okay. So just to clarify, if you had something that done X, Y, and Z, cost this, and there was no this, that, or the other, that's something you'd be interested in. Okay, cool. Can I tell you a little bit about what I do? Because I think it could solve some of those issues. Yeah, sure. All of a sudden, I don't feel like I'm being sold to at all because you've just understood everything about my situation, all the problems, the implications, and now you're giving me the need payoff of it, the classic sort of spin selling. That type of shit, I don't mind.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I think if you ask the right questions and trigger the right emotional response, that's where you see the wins. So, like an example I can give, I've seen uh, a much better conversion rate in like my cold calling.
Hmm.
Literally from opening my calls with, it's Fraser Graham here from Nautic Recruitment. Have you got 5 minutes to speak? To then changing it to, hey Charles, it's Fraser Graham here. Does that ring any bells? And it gets you back up and it triggers a certain emotional response. And you'd go, should it? Should it ring a bell? And you might
Hmm.
go, no, it doesn't actually. And I can make a joke of it and be like, ah, it's all right, mate. I didn't expect that you know who I am. We're connected on LinkedIn, so I thought I'd ask the question. And then we can get selling from there and it's opened up the conversation. But if I open it with Fraser Graham calling from Nautic Recruitment, I've got an opportunity for you. It just sounds like you're getting sold to straight away. And
Hmm.
the emotional temperature is just really low. But
Yeah.
if you can frame the question correct, you can get the emotional temperature up here and open up the door.
That's interesting. I've never heard of that type of opener because I don't know if I think I done a post about this somewhat recently. I had a guy called Terry Payne on the show, who's the global MD of Aspire, big recruitment firm, and we spoke about like the permission based openers, and he was like, I hate them. They just be and I think one of the reasons why he mentioned that, and I've fallen into that now, is that it got kind of like boycotted by the TikTok brigade and like all the SDRs using it, and then all of a sudden everyone is recording themselves on TikTok and LinkedIn, like, "Hey Fraser, it's so so. If you got 30 seconds, otherwise you can throw your phone out the window." It's like everyone's doing it, so it's just
Yeah.
it sounds fucking annoying now. And granted, it does work. Like it does work for some people, and it is about the tone. But I just say to people like if you think about a traditional opener, if we're speaking to a client or even speaking to a candidate in your case, right, and you say, Fraser, hey, it's Charles Kiriakou. I work for a business called Nautic Recruitment, whatever, or just call it Nautic. Look, reason for the call today is because of X, Y, and Z. Totally understand you may or may not be looking, but thought it might be worth reaching out. Have I caught you the worst possible time? Sorry. I know who you are, where you're calling from, why you're calling. You've asked, is it now the worst possible time? Which, when is the worst possible time? You're in hospital with a family member, etc. I'm at a funeral. Like, it's not the worst possible time. Cool. Let me just get a couple of seconds. I'll talk you through it. If you think it's relevant, we can carry on. If not, you can whatever. And that is just a traditional one. And if you do it with the right tonality, because like you said, if you do it the hey, Fraser, it's Charles here from Nautic. Obviously, largely a lot of people are just gonna be like fucking in the bin, mate.
Yeah.
But I like trying creative things with cold calls or headhunt calls and stuff. But I always say to people, I just think you just need to be a bit mindful with some of the approaches because you just don't. Again, maybe this is just me saying this. I just don't ever want to feel like I'm doing the same thing exactly how every other fucker is doing it. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, mate. You said there, I think, is it the worst possible time? That goes back to what I was saying. It's a certain emotional frame which makes you think, no, it's not the worst possible time.
Mm,
What harm is it going to do for me to speak to this guy for literally 2 minutes? And also, I respect him because I work in sales as well. So I see what he's done. So yeah, mate, it's everything's about how you frame it, your tonality as well. Like I say, I was very intentional when I gave you that example there. I was like, it's Fraser Graham, mate. Does that ring a bell? I've not said where I'm calling from.
hmm
I've kind of lowered my tonality and almost made it
hmm
almost like a bit of a whisper.
mm,
I'm sure like Chris Voss, the
yeah.
Never Split the Difference guy would say it's like the late night DJ voice.
Yeah.
It really helps, mate. And these are all just different ways of like using tonality and the right questions to kind of like open up the door for future questions as well.
I think those types of things really work when you're dealing with salespeople. Because one of the issues I had when I started to work the European desk, like Germany, Austria, Switzerland, was that my natural cadence, as it were, my natural tone, I'm obviously just packed full of energy. Some would even call it nervous energy, where it's, "Hey Fraser, I saw your CV online. I think you'd be a fantastic fit because I got this." And then a lot of the Germans were like, "A, not my first language. You're gonna have to slow the fuck down. B, wait, say it again. What?" And then I just got a lot of pushback from people because I was just too hypey. I was just too excitable and like, I've got a fucking great job. You're going to be perfect for it. So then it was like, okay, cool. So I have to shift a little bit and channel that excitement because a lot of the time with recruiters, you can sense passion and excitement without it being frantic. And granted, when I do the podcast, sometimes I do come across a little bit frantic because I get so excited. But if you can channel that, so if I'm speaking to an MD or a founder of a recruitment firm, and it is when I get into the questioning phase, and it's I always say that I know it's cliche, the smile and dial, when you have a smile on your face and go, really? So what was that? Like, how did that actually work? Why was that a challenge for you? Just out of curiosity. That sort of tone, like take it down a notch. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just get you opening up. Because if I just go and read through a list of 10 questions and go, cool, so what's been your biggest issue, Fraser? All right. What's been the implication of that issue, Fraser? And it's just like very interrogative, if that's a word, then again, that's another thing I think at least people can get their back will go up and they'll just go, this is just you're just reading from a script. This is like feels like an interrogation rather than a back and forth.
Yeah, how you come across is everything, right? Like, I'm sure the viewers watching this and the listeners listening to me, they've probably got the impression, which is true. I'm not the most salesy person ever, but I think that's why it works for me in rec to rec. I don't come across and like really excitable. Like, there's a difference between me and you, Charles. You're very high energy, and that's just not me, but it works in my space. Whereas in what you do, it works perfectly, right? Especially being a great podcast host. So, yeah, it takes a certain type of person, a certain type of personality to work in specific industries, whether you sell to salespeople, whether you sell to doctors, lawyers, whatever it may be.
Totally agree. And I think if there's a recruiter listening to this that's fairly early on in their career, that's really sound advice because I've always been told you've got to find a market early and dominate that market if you want to be successful in recruitment. Because when you see, you must have seen this as a rec to rec, when you see someone that's been in a job for a month in finance, then they go and do healthcare for 6 months or a year, then they go and do, I don't know, whatever else for another year. And it's like you're always starting from scratch. Like the first year in recruitment is so fucking hard. You've worked all that time to then build up some form of reputation, then you have to start again. Like it's, to fit, you really got to figure out like, what is your personality? What types of people are you going to vibe with? Like, what do you enjoy as well? I was fucking lucky that my first proper job, my first proper stint was in healthcare because as dark as it is, I was always in and out of hospital with my mum going through cancer treatments and various different fucking orthopedic surgeries. So now I get nurses to work for me in a contract sense and double their earnings. Oh, and my client meetings mean that I get to go to hospitals, meet these doctors, nurses, heads of departments, and then do business with them. That's fucking great. And even though like 90% of my nurses were either from India or countries in Africa, and English was certainly not their first language, they loved the energy. They loved it. Especially the African nurses were the biggest vibe. When they used to come into the office, then they'd bring food. I'd take them out for dinner. I had this one lady called Natombi who was she was called grandmother at the Lister Hospital in Stevenage, which our baby was born at. And I took her out for lunch once, and she was literally like parading me around, South African lady, saying, "This is my grandson. This is my grandson." I was like, this is just fucking insane. But they loved the energy because if you call the nurse up and be like, Fraser, I can literally double your earnings. I'm not bullshitting you. I've got 15 other nurses on my books right now that were earning 25 grand a year. They're now earning 50, 60 grand a year. Do you want to work with me? Yes or no? What car do you want to buy, Fraser? I'll get you the nicest fucking. They loved it. They loved
Yeah.
the energy. If I did that in a tech world or a finance world where, you've got people just coding in their fucking basements that don't want to speak to people on the phone, and they've got some energetic 21-year-old going, I could get you to pay your mortgage. They're going to go, mate, fuck off.
Yeah, mate, like the first job that you have in recruitment, I say this all the time, it's a lottery. So you can either get in a perfect market for you, or you can be stung and getting something that's terrible and just doesn't suit your personality. Like for me, I feel that my main strengths are empathy and that I listen. I don't really speak too much when I'm speaking to candidates or clients. I shut my mouth and listen with my two ears, and that works really well, especially when you've got, a recruiter that's on the phone venting saying, oh, my manager's been a massive dick for the last year, and I've not billed for X, Y, and Z reason. The CRM's rubbish. You need a rec to rec on the other side of the phone that's just going to listen, ask the right questions, and give solutions. Whereas if you come on like, oh, mate, working with the best recruitment business out in the market, they've got £5 million plus billers, and you're going to be the next one. That's probably not going to be suited for most recruiters that are looking for a new role and have got a lot of pain points. So it takes a certain type of person. It sounds like you've smashed it in your industry with your type of energy. So
Yeah.
you see why it worked.
Yeah, and likewise with you, mate, because if I look back at the best rec to recs I had, they at one point were essentially kind of like a therapist because when I left that healthcare company, it left very sour and, there was legal implications and whatnot. But at that time, I would broken up with my girlfriend. My grandfather died. He was like the head of the family, and obviously, just that the way that things left with that job were really bad. So bad things happening in threes, and the rec to rec was like the shoulder to cry on, just like guiding me through it. And she just essentially she coached me through it, mate, because I was 22 years old at the time, right? And she was like, look, you need to get a job in the city. You're working in these like local offices that, they're all the same types of people. I'm not talking about race, religion, but like they all grew up in the same area. They all think the same. If you work in the city, you'll be surrounded by people that think differently, come from different backgrounds, and you'll have a better salary, better career options. These companies in London, well, they'll take you on holidays and stuff. I was like, really? Like, I don't know about that. I don't want to pay money to go into London and, with the train and having to do that bullshit commute. She's like, Charles, I'm telling you from experience, just fucking go and meet them. Just go and meet them. What have you got to lose? And I was like, fair enough. Lo and behold, I was at my next business for like 6 years after that, purely based on her. But imagine like a recruiter, is 22 years old, going through those three pretty fucking life-changing moments. Some of the rec to recs I was dealing with, mate, were doing the opposite of like, right, okay, I've got a job for you in the city. It pays this. It's in finance and accounting. I'm like, I have no interest in that market, mate. The commission's fucking sick. Yeah, but I could go and work in something else with a slightly less commission scheme, and if I enjoy it, I'll still earn good money because I back myself. Like, what are we doing here? So I've worked with some recruiters that were the opposite to you in respect that just didn't listen, didn't like offer any value and support. They just wanted to spec my profile out and get a deal, and that just it made me feel gross.
Well, that's a sign of a good recruiter. Empathy and emotional intelligence. Like I've heard some crazy things over the years, and I've had to be very empathetic in certain situations. So, like off the top of my head, over the past few months, I had a very senior candidate who was looking great for me personally, going through a round of interviews with an investor that I connected them with, and got to the final stage, and he turned around to me and said, "They've actually just discovered that I've got a tumor." And
Oh,
obviously
Jesus.
that's really going to stop my job search. I'm not going to be doing anything anytime soon. Obviously, there has to be a big level of empathy there. It has to be just like, okay, we'll draw a line under it. That's completely understandable. Your health is the most important thing, so go away, get yourself sorted. And if you ever want to revisit, if the time can come again, then let's take it from there. And I also had another guy as well who basically wanted to make a big leap into like more of a managerial leadership position, take a lot more ownership. Seemed like they were ready to do it, and then life happened. I think they split up with their wife and
Mm,
was now looking to relocate away. And these things do happen, and you do have to be a bit of a therapist at time.
mm.
Um, but I guess that's just the game that we're in.
It is. Did you ever fall into that trap of not believing some of the things that candidates said? The whole cliche of, oh, my nan's died. And then like 6 months later, my nan's died. It's like, okay. Then their nan dies again. It's like this is the most like, well-known thing in recruitment of like if their nan's died, it's probably bullshit, which the first few times, not necessarily that specific example, the first few times people have said, oh, I've had a car crash, I can't go to the interview or whatever. I'll never forget that my manager, I won't say his name because it's bad, literally just turned around and went, bullshit. I
Yeah,
went, mate, you can't say that. I was like, literally, they've just had a car crash. And it's like, pictures or it didn't happen. And
yeah.
like that, like there's no empathy. And he was like, mate, you're very naive to this. Like candidates will just throw any excuse at you to bullshit you. And oh yeah, my kid fell down the stairs and I've got to take him to hospital, or like I've got a health scare. So yeah, call me back, and then you never hear from the candidate again. So is my camera's about to die, by the way. So if that does die, I'll have to fix this. Right. So my camera's died. Lesson learned for me is make sure both batteries are charged, even if you do a in-person podcast. Is what it is. But you can still see Fraser's lovely smile. He can't see how much I'm smiling right now, but yeah, it is what it is. Look, we've been going for about an hour or so now, anyways. And I think, to be honest, mate, it's been a fucking pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation. We've gone through so much, and I think you've added a tremendous amount of value. There's been so many cool little interesting tactics and techniques that you utilize, and some really cool opinions. And yeah, overall, mate, I've really enjoyed it. So, as you know, the final question I always end up with on every episode is following today's show. How can people get 1% better in recruitment?
How can people get 1% better in recruitment? So for me, I'd say lean on people that can be mentors to you. I think that's been a massive thing. Like we spoke earlier on about ultimately like what gave me the encouragement to set up by myself. And as I reflect over the last year, it's really been about meeting specific people that have acted as mentors to me and have given me a lot of advice. So to get 1% better, I'd say seek those in your industry who have done what you are looking to achieve, lean on them, don't be scared to ask how to do things, and ultimately see if you can get them on your side to help you in whatever you want to do in the future.
Power. Power answer to a power episode, mate. Love it. Cool. In terms of people that tune into this episode and to the podcast, people that want to reach out to you, what types of people specifically should reach out to you if they've listened to this?
So, if you're a recruiter from consultant level up to director level and you're based in the Northwest, particularly in Manchester, and you're looking for a new role or you're looking to grow your team, then feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find me at Fraser Graham on LinkedIn, or you can find me through Nautic on LinkedIn and Instagram as well.
Wonderful. All right, mate. Cool. I'll put all your details in the at the bottom of this. And for people that have made it this far, thank you very much. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for watching this episode or listening to this episode, guys. Let me know, what was your biggest takeaway from this week's guest? What did you think about their answer to the 1% better in recruitment? I'm really keen to hear your thoughts. If you haven't already, please drop us a like if you're on YouTube, follow on Apple and Spotify, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm really keen to get some feedback from you all on what you think about the format of these episodes. Are there any other guests that you think we should have on the show? Are you someone that wants to be a guest on the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast? Because if so, you can just simply DM me on LinkedIn. You can drop me an email. All my details are below on these videos. And I'm always interested in having absolute legends come on the show that want to have real open conversation, that want to talk about things that could even be potentially controversial. We could debate certain things, but the whole point, as I mentioned at the start of the video, guys, is that my whole purpose with this show is to help the recruitment industry get 1% better after every episode. So make sure you're following, subscribing on all the different platforms, and I'll see you next week.